Bam.
This is Peter Matsoukas, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
This is what we do. It's Friday. I love it. We're having a chance to chat. We've met previously and had you on the show a while back talking about a previous project. Since we last spoke, I have become, we'll say, a filmmaker. That, look, it's funny when it's like I'm an actor, I'm a comedian, I'm an author. What does that mean, right? Like a podcaster. Oh, I'm a podcaster. I don't even say that anymore because it's almost derogatory. I love like when people on X are like, "Oh, you got a podcast." Like you've never even listened to it, and you're just mocking it instantly. So when you tell people that you make films, how do you give them an idea of where you're at?
I think I just, because I have a lot of passion for it, hopefully it comes through in the convictions of, the way that I talk about it or address them or try to live up to being a filmmaker. I've always seen myself as a filmmaker for the last 20 something years, making different projects, whether they be short films, short narrative films, short docs, feature narratives, long or longish featurette docs. I've always believed it. So I think I've always led with being a filmmaker first and foremost. But, I do other things too. I mean, I'm a professor, I'm a marketing professional. I have lots of side hustles as well. I don't podcast, but I do listen to plenty of pods. But it's nowadays you can do many things. Many are masters of none, but hopefully we are masters of one at least.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it. It's funny too, because you can be wildly successful. Like we'll just use my show for a second. I've been around for over 10 years, 2,000 episodes published. When you look at Podcast Mountain, I'm way the fuck up there, but essentially non-existent for a lot of people because it's a very crowded space. A lot of big names have gotten in. A lot of people who are no names have blown way past me to get up to the very top, right? And so it's the same thing in the filmmaking industry. Is you look at the names of the films from 25 years ago, a lot of those people aren't even in the industry anymore. It's just a very hard place to survive. And so you have to do things like, I learned how to market, so I do that too to make money or whatever that is. What is it supposed to be that hard to be recognized, even though you're excellent at what you do? Like what people hire me for, it's not because I've got this breakout show. They hire me because my production muscle is huge. And they know that, hey, we don't have to worry about production when we talk to people. They don't even know that when they talk to me, but they quickly understand, like, whatever you're worried about, gear and what software, stop worrying about all that. I want you guys to figure out how you're going to sit in front of me and actually make your show every week, which is harder for them than it is for me to solve all their problems. I don't even have a problem yet. Give me a problem. Can you show up every day? So talk a little bit about that difference between someone who makes things, you make things, and the idea of what it means to be successful in the business.
Well, you clearly want to be successful solely so you can get paid to do what you love. I think that's the dream, to be able to make projects as a writer, as a director, to have the time and the space to really focus 1,000% on your projects. At least that's what it's always been for me. I've always wanted to, have that headspace to dream and think on things and sort of ruminate. And, with life, sometimes you have to find those spots to do that. For me, it might be the 30 minutes I walk my dog, that might be, or my dogs, I might have an epiphany there, but it's, ideally I would be in a safe space where I could just harness these things all day. But until then, you just have to prioritize and keep hustling to do that. But I think that success is the freedom to keep making art. At least that's what it's like to me.
Yeah, it's tough to get me to do something I don't want to do because I have a lot of freedom with this opportunity machine that I've made with the Break It Down show, right? So I don't have to do things I don't want to do. I would like to make more money, but that money now, access to that is going to cost me freedom. And so it is very hard for me to justify giving up freedom for not enough money. And so that makes me a little bit precious with my time and my freedom. But I think that's a measure of success.
I think that's fair. I think that if you don't have to do things just for the sake of earning that check, or that is freedom, no doubt. And I I've worked a lot of jobs that I haven't wanted to do, a lot of freelance assignments that
Yeah.
are just for the sake of, getting that paycheck, getting a little comfort, but comfort isn't freedom.
No, right, right. And let me make sure I say this out loud to anybody who wants to hire me. I love your project. I would like to work. So I take on things, and even if I do it, most likely I love the person or I love the idea. Rarely is it because I need specific amounts of money, but sometimes it is like this is a means to an ends, and so I'm going to do this, and it's going to be for this much duration, right? Because we are successful enough at what we do to create these things and create opportunities. One of the reasons why I'm moving into the filmmaking side is my show is so successful at opportunities. I've got to put energy into those opportunities because the money isn't for me on the show side. It's on the creation of documentaries, film projects, securing, I talk to so many, you'll get this. I talk to so many authors that are so passionate about their work and they've just done a great job, but they have zero access to the film and documentary marketplace. And sure, they'll go on the tour and they'll walk around, but they're just one of the next people. It's like being a dude at a strip club. Like, yeah, as long as you got money, you can sit here, otherwise you don't exist. And you better have a lot of money, And so my show has become this thing where I'm like, yeah, that's a great thing. Let me take this into the marketplace and see if there's interest. And there's quite often interest, but the level of the quality of and all the other things, that's when the work starts jumping in.
Right. Well, I mean, to have that, to have those inroads, it would be a sin not to, check them out, to drive down and see how it goes. And hey, if you need some producing partners, Rockstar Films is always taking on new projects.
You know it. You and I will talk all offline. I've got more projects than I've got time, which is a good thing, right? Because there are these authors that do have these great books that do deserve to see these incredible stories all over the place. And I think this is one of the benefits of the modern time is it is easier to make something because you can basically greenlight yourself for a reasonable amount of money.
Sure.
And you can take your movie to market and maybe it does well, maybe it doesn't do well, but there's still money in that market, even if you don't kill it, right? So you really can create something that is evergreen as well. So, and this would just be talking to the audience, you can make a movie that has a limited time where it's marketable, but a lot of times now a movie might break, let's say you make a movie based on a book and that movie doesn't go crazy, pays for itself and you can go on to the next project, but then Oprah discovers your book and all of a sudden the book and the movie go bonkers right to the moon. And now your movie is worth millions more dollars. And so it's wild and it's hard to navigate how to sell things because you got to sell the studio or the streaming platform. And then you still got to sell it to the internet, all these different places where you can sell things. So it's still competitive there. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, that's a lot to unpack. There's, yeah, I don't even know where to begin, Pete. That's
yeah.
There's, if you have a property that people like, if you have a book that has a built-in audience, making a film and developing the rights, getting the rights, I think that's a smart way to make a film. You have some infrastructure, you have some people who are interested. Right. And yeah, again, if Oprah or, whatever, New York Times or whatever, it could totally explode. My stuff is, we've been on the fringes. We don't really do a lot of like non-original content.
Sure.
I'd love to be able to develop a book, like option a book and really develop that. And, but yeah, I mean, I think that once you have the film to market, especially if you're working with a lower budget and you don't have so many upfront costs and overhead, and a lot of distributors are changing too now. They're a lot more. They're a lot smaller. The whole distribution model is changing a bit. So, I mean, with Beelines, our distributors, deliver films, and they're, a lot of the marketing is up to me, and a lot of that money is not, that's not stuff I necessarily need to recoup, but I have to sell the film. I have to get out there and sell it, and that's also empowering because it gives me it's on me, and sometimes I prefer it to be that way because otherwise I'm waiting to check in with distributors and perhaps there isn't the best communication. I'd rather have the ball run with it, and have it be on me.
It's there's a couple. So if you think of like the writing world, anybody can write a book and self-publish for a very reasonable amount of money. But now you are also the publisher, you're also the marketing person, you're also the salesperson, you're also the, the talent, all these things, right? And it's the same kind of thing in the movie world where you can absolutely self-raise enough money to get this project made. But then you got to go and you got to get it onto the platform or go into the distribution. Like you have to master all of these pieces of the puzzle. Which part are you trying to get off your back as soon as you can? Like when you hit the next level, you're like, I no longer want to be my own director of photography or whatever it is. What would that hat be that you'd like to get off your head and give to somebody who really does that for a living?
For me, it's editing. To be perfectly frank, I love to edit, but I find that I'm a really slow editor, and it just takes a lot of time. And if I could pass that off to somebody who could bring their own fresh perspective to it, I could work with, collaborate with on a daily basis, like be in the room with somebody else, I think that could be a good relationship. I have never been much of a shooter, and I have liked to produce. I've been producing a lot more, so. I mean, ideally, I'd be writing and directing, or directing, and that alone. But I said if I had to shed one, it would be editing. But also, producing. I produce very little small movies. If I'm going to make bigger films, I'm going to need people who can focus entirely on producing. And as a film fan, I've always appreciated filmmakers who focus on their one thing. I think that some directors who do a lot of other things are overextended, and they should focus on directing. I mean, maybe Steven Soderbergh is an outlier because he shoots and he does all these incredible things, and his cinematography is fantastic. But oftentimes, I feel like things suffer if you can't focus on your one specific bit of expertise. Yeah,
and you also. If you get successful doing the whole thing yourself, and there's a lot of examples of this, you are not working with enough people that'll tell you no, that you need to do something else or change something, right? And you can just like, no, I've always done it myself, and this is how I'm going to do it. And so you start making decisions that aren't the best decisions because you don't have that trusted group of people that do those things like shoot or edit. And by the way, if everybody listen, not only editing, but there's a guy in front of the editor who's also an editor who's like assembles everything. Right. There's like a friend of mine works for Hans Zimmer, and he makes sounds so that Hans can go in. And so he's also composing in front of the and so there's all these multiple jobs that you could take that editing job and crack it into 3 different jobs. And now there's 3 people there. And all of a sudden it gets harder to make a movie because you got to pay 4 people because you're sitting in the same room with them.
Yeah, I mean, when you see that scrolling, end credits, there are a lot of people doing similar jobs in teams. It's incredible, really. I mean, I support that because they're all incredible artisans and technicians. I have a great collaborator of mine who is really phenomenal at a lot of these things. Jacob Belinsky directed this film Compression that is doing very well in the circuit, and I wrote it with him and produced it with him. But he also shot it, he edited it, he colors it, and he does all these things wonderfully. And I hope for his next film that he will delegate a bit more, because I feel like sometimes filmmakers do get very proprietary about their baby, and it's maybe he can, maybe James Cameron may be the best of everything on his film set, but ultimately, if he did everything, it would probably kill him. So, I mean, you have to, for your mental headspace, for your durability in the business, for keeping that spark alive, you have to keep fresh and delegate. And not to mention, there are so many wonderful surprises you're going to find along the way if you do that.
I've got more projects that I've got capacity to get them out, right? And they're all so wonderful. And they're all like my little kids. And I'm like, oh, we got to pay attention to this one a little bit. Do you feel like your pace can be any faster than what it is? I mean, sure, you can add some capacity externally, but you have to pay for that and reliably tell these people, hey, I'm going to pay you, and it has to happen, and they can rely on you, right? There's a lot of pressure there. But What's your pace? Is it a movie every year, every 5 years? What do you think is reasonable for you to do that, and then also have a life where you're not just killing yourself because you're doing all this work?
Yeah, well, it all depends on time and opportunity. Um, I happen to have 4 films coming out right now, either the festival circuit or distribution. Like they're all happening like right now. But
Right.
those have been in different levels of production and pre-production for the last couple of years, ever since No
Yeah.
Place. So, but now it seems like it's all been happening concurrently, but it's been staggered over these 4 years. But now it's like, what are we doing next? And the hope is like I'm starting pre-production on a documentary, on a feature-length documentary, and also a narrative feature for next year. So
Oh, nice.
I think maybe 1 or 2 projects as a director, but I'm always excited about producing, getting on board, even if it's as a co-producer, helping to meet people, introduce people, connect dots. There's always time to make conversations, and especially when you're hustling in the film business, I find that you always have to be open to everything at all times, because you never know which one is going to, blow up. So, and you want to be, you want to be on, you don't want to blow up, but you want to be on the thing that ascends to Mars. So, and there are a lot of projects I've just been buzzing around, and I'm hopeful to get involved in, but I keep working with them, and there's so many interesting scripts that are just floating around. But I'm open to all of it. And so every time I'm approached by a young writer who I meet at a festival or through a friend, I'm like, you can send me your stuff. I'd love to read it. Let's work on it. And maybe I can move that along in the process, and who knows where that's going to lead. So in terms of personal projects, maybe 1 or 2 at the most for a year or 2, but I'm open to all things at all times, because that's like a different part of your brain. The business side, being a film fan, being a film, like a student of film, like someone who loves film, I have opinions, and I can always watch films and give opinions. So
it's funny. I enjoy the thought of me having a beret on and like action, but I'm not a director, and I know that about myself, right? So the dream is there, and the passion is certainly there. But I'm also not a person that wants to read 500. I read quite a few screenplays, but I'm not a person that's like, I read 1 a day. I'm always reading them. I'm always working on them. As much as I have 27 different Word documents open with the beginnings of a story treatment, it's not really what I do, right? I try to get better at certain parts of it, but you can't do it all. What I am good at doing is sort of filling that space on the producer side, a lot of like what you do, where I'll find the log jam, and then I'll throw energy into that log jam and see if I can bust a log loose. Maybe I got to go back, and it's a log 5 logs back to do it. And maybe it's a different person who is available. And I'm like, oh, I've got this person in my network, or I need to meet a person who has this capability. Like I don't know anybody on the distributing side, really. So, I need to fix that problem at some point. So there's all these little things that I do when I'm producing. One of them is bird dogging all these great stories. And that's hugely, I've got friends that are like, I'm too busy to do what you do. I don't want to do this next billionaire's next project that he's passionate about. I want to do these projects that you're finding, right? So I've got an ear and the nose for what people want to make. But then all of a sudden my production skills, they start to drop off real fast, right? And so I've got to make myself more valuable so that I'm not just bird dogging, that I'm actually like assembling teams of people. But that moves as fast as that moves. You cannot move that pile of work any faster than it will allow you to do it. Man, oh man, am I learning that lesson? Like, this is easy. Just get these 5 people in a room at the same time. Impossible? Okay. And so it's exciting, but it's frustrating. And I'm always like, this project's never going to make it. And then it'll leap ahead. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it just leapt ahead. I didn't expect that. I did clear that log jam. It just took patience, and so, man, it's exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
It is. It absolutely is. I think that what's frustrating, the frustrating part is when you have a screenplay and you have something that may or may not be viable, but the screenwriter needs to make that step. That's the leap of faith that the writer, unless that screenplay is sold and then the producer has shown that he or she wants to make it, and we're going. That film is optioned, and it's got to be made in a certain amount of time. But I've been on developing projects and reading drafts, and it's like, can we get over this hump? Are we, you know, that's the frustration for me. And often, and that's when a lot of projects die, because they're just, maybe they were never viable in the first place, or there isn't the passion or the means behind it to really push it. Because once the ball starts rolling, it'll go faster. But you have to get over the hump before it can do that. And like, and just the development process is like, that's all what that is to me.
I've got a project I'm working on, and it's fantastic. It's great. It should be made, right? But it has proven to be so hard to get enough energy into the ball that because I can't roll up the hill by myself. You know how this goes. And so it's like there's all these carts and all these horses, and I can't get enough damn carts and horses in the same corral going in the same direction, right? And so I'm like, am I making a mistake? Am I pushing too hard on this? Do I have to find someone who wants this as much as I do? And so I think about that. Like, I can compel something to happen to a certain point in this project, but is that the right use of my time and the money that I've secured and everything else? And I definitely worry about, like, am I making a mistake? Because even if I get this thing made, hey, it's still got to do something once it gets there, right? Does that make sense, or am I being too negative?
No, I think it's pragmatic. I don't think it's negative at all. I think that, and I've been there, and I'm actually there right now with some projects where the film is made and we are in purgatory. You know, we need to figure out how to get this thing seen, and you know, how to get out of purgatory, basically, how to recoup some money, some goodwill. These projects, you know, they last a long time, and they can take you down. They can, you know, create, you know, issues with friendships and with partnerships. So,
oh my gosh,
you know, hopefully you can get there and get to a place where at least there's a sense of contentment with and closure to the project. And that's where, you know, not most projects are not going to end with Academy Awards in your hands and, you know, thanking your grandmother on stage. But, you know, hopefully you are feeling empowered that, like, everyone feels like they got something out of it, and it hopefully leads to other projects. You know, the first time we chatted was about No Place, and that's a film that, you know, didn't really do too much. I mean, it's still streaming, and, you know, didn't do a ton of business. It's still, you know, doing something. But that film out of that film has a lot of my key collaborators have made feature films since then.
Yeah. Right.
So, and it sort of built up an infrastructure, and a community. So I feel like, in its own way, it did something very positive, and it continues to give back, even though it might not be, you know, a financial windfall in my pocket. It actually has created jobs and resources and opportunity for others. So, you know, sometimes it's like you have to think of it like that too. Like, it's not always about money, but the bottom line is you're putting in a lot of money, and you want to get it back so you can keep making more films, bigger films.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, my theory at least, is that I can go to my friends and family and get seed money started and return that money back to them, or say, hey, do you want to let this ride, or let the seed money ride and go into the next project, right? And if they believe in me and my hard work, you know, then we should be all right. But the market sometimes changes its mind. And you know, the market right now is still sorting itself out from the last strike, and the streamers are like, God, how does this work? You know, everybody's trying to figure this out, and it makes it hard to get things made that should maybe get made. And I definitely am feeling some of that. But then again, because I'm someone that has ideas, the other day I got a phone call like, hey, do you have anything in this realm, in this space? And so now I've become a resource for things that they think are marketable, that they are ready to take to market, and there is funding for. Now it's just a matter of picking the right story and getting that thing sorted, which, again, we're skipping a lot of steps, but development is a whole nother thing too.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like right now, in some ways, it's the Wild West. You know, that things haven't settled. Like, things are a little crazy out there.
Yeah.
A lot of films out there. Obviously, a lot of films are being distributed. But, you know, it's always been a risky venture. investing in
Yeah.
films has always been risky. Hopefully you interact with people who have money that, it's that I guess they wouldn't mind losing, or
Right.
maybe they may have to recoup it over, 5-10 years, because it is a risk. I mean, unless you have, a bankable star, but that's when the stakes go up and there are even bigger risks. So it's like, I prefer playing blackjack or craps in Vegas, honestly. But no, that's or keeping my stakes small so that I'm fast and loose, and I'm not I'm not dependent on a film, doubling its profits.
Right.
But again, I want to keep making bigger films and connecting with other people, because I'm like you, Pete, I'm meeting a lot of filmmakers and people who can start to shake the money tree, and it's like finding the right opportunity, the right means, the right project. All this stuff is so fortuitous, and when it works, but most of the time it doesn't work in the end run, or in the same way that we envision it in our dreams.
My cat is wanting me to feed my cat. So she's in my lap. So my cat doesn't often do it, but she wants to be the star of the show today. Sorry, kid, go somewhere else. There you go. In a lot of ways, you're describing my show, right? So my show produces money, and gosh, it's great that it does. And I invest most of almost every single cent of it back into the show, gear, travel, whatever it's going to be. And look, maybe it'll take off one day. I don't know that I want that to even happen anymore, because it creates opportunities for me. Like I get to talk to you, I get to know you. You and I will talk offline, and maybe we'll find a project to work on. But it's less about the success of whatever the project is. In your case, No Place. Like, it went out and it did its job. It would be great if it went better, but it created all these other opportunities for all these other people. It's your job as a producer. It's my job as a producer to say, what do I do with this value, right? And how do I build a bridge that allows me to make more things and make them more easily and take on risk that's manageable? Like the amount of money I'm taking on right now, it's negligible in the real world, but to my friends, it's real money. And so I've got to come through for them or figure out some way to make it up to them, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've asked them to rely on me, but if they would have said no, I can't hold that against them, because I've not made one of these things. The people I'm working with have made wonderful things, but I've not made anything. And so I'm the unknown commodity, right? And so when they see that, but once I've made one, once I've made two, then I can go back to them and say, hey, let's do this again. But first, I got to manage my risks. I got to manage all these things. It's fascinating work. By the way, way safer than my old job, being a spy in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I tell my friends, I'm like, look, this is not as hard as doing that, right? So this is where the danger lies, is can I pay you off on this thing? And we're not talking a lot. We're talking, I don't know, less than $10,000, right? And all these guys, they have that money. They don't want to lose it, but this is not a huge risk for them. And I purposely kind of spread it out a lot, but within a very specific network.
Sure. Well, a project that I'm on the verge of starting, shooting actually next week, is about a musician in Wisconsin named Pat McCurdy. He's one of the hardest working men in Wisconsin showbiz. He's a troubadour. He's been traveling for years. And my friends and I learned of him at the University of Wisconsin when we were students there, and hitting the bars. And we love this guy. We've been listening to him for a long time. And me and my two friends from college have pooled together a certain amount of money to make this documentary about him. And, yes, there is a financial, it's not a ton of money, but it's split equally, and we're going in together. But we have a love for his music and his story. Sure. And we think we want to get that out to the world. We think it's something beyond just, the people who go to bars in Wisconsin. Like, there's a story there. So, but there is something more to it. Like, we are personally invested. Our heart is in it. And for us, it's easier to part with that money because we think it's going somewhere where, the story we really feel passionate about. We want it to be told. Yeah. So the documentary space, in a way, it's easier, at least to sell people, because they could believe, or in a cause, or in something that's historically important. I deal in a lot of genre films, horror films, and people love horror, and it's a financially wonderfully viable genre, because people those films typically make money. People like horror movies, even bad horror movies, good horror movies. But it's hard to feel the same level of passion from a random investor, who might be more invested in someone's music or in event, or in the Holocaust, or or like surviving stories of history, or whatever it is. I have a friend a producer friend who just is taking this festival about this ice cream man who was killed in the Holocaust, and it is garnering incredible acclaim and doing very well, and people are extremely passionate about it. And he was able to raise a ton of money because people feel connected to it, and they want that story to be told. A little horror movie might be harder, and so it's just how do you approach people for funding? I try to keep my family out of it. I've had family members wanting to invest in certain things. I'm like, you really want to do that? I'm not, not that I thank you for believing in me. I believe in me too, but let's think about that. Also, I don't want that burden either. So it's the whole money thing it's hard.
Yeah. And then, so there's a project I'm working on. It's about a very early fight in the prize fighting world. It's in the 1800s, but it was done in my hometown. And so I'm going to bring a film to this town, even if we don't make it all there or none of it there, maybe. I should have no problem going into town and pulling $100,000 out of that town to make this thing, right? Except for when you show up and you're like, I'm going to make this thing we've all talked about all of our lives. All I need is $100,000. And everybody's like looking around like, who, me?
That Spider-Man meme. You, me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I think about that too, where folks want you to do something, and you're like, well, I'm doing it, and now's the time to show up. And like when we talk about what films should stop making superhero movie films. Okay, great. Well, then when you have someone who's making a film that's not superhero, go watch it. Go invest in it and spend time supporting things like Peter here, who's making this great project, right? Let's talk about Beelines a little bit, unless you want to talk about No Place a little bit and follow up on that. But
no, I think No Place is in the past. I'm happy where it is, but Beelines I'd love to talk about in some of these other projects.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
So go ahead. No, you do. You're the one talking.
Beelines is it's a horror adjacent, atmospheric noirish horror film.
Mm-hmm.
Very low budget, small crew, incredible actors. It's basically about a woman who's being stalked by a man from her past, and she needs to flee. Her friend sets her up at a safe house where she can flee to this house if he contacts her. But she doesn't realize that the safe house isn't as safe as she thinks is. And so when things start going awry, she calls on an unlikely friend for help who is her coworker. But that opens up a whole other can of worms. So it's a story of survival. It's a very strong female protagonist. I saw this as, the last couple of years, there have been a lot of, there's been an assault on many women's rights, many human rights. But I thought that this was something I wanted to, I thought it could be a metaphor for what I'm trying to say in this film. I think good horror films, they shock and scare you, but there's also something under the surface contextually that can hopefully make it something more resonant and about 2024. So I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. When do you expect it to drop and come out and be available?
Well, it's already on Amazon, but it's sometime in the next few weeks. It's going to pop on all the streamers. A lot of AVOD streamers like Tubi and Vudu. I'm a huge Tubi fan. Do you ever watch Tubi by chance?
I don't have Tubi. I have. I do watch. Let's see. What do I watch? Pluto TV.
Yeah.
You know about Pluto?
I do.
And I love. He's like. Let me just take a sidebar because I want to see what you think about this. I grew up and I loved Flipper. I loved it. I swam all the time. And apparently I learned a lot from the show because I'm like, ooh, you don't go in there. Like I learned things about swimming and going underwater from that show. And then I just like, I'm a sucker for choral music, and just actual musicians sitting in an actual studio making actual sounds for a little half-hour show. I love the craftsmanship. And then it was one of the shows that early on started bringing in actual live footage of things. And it's all continuity is terrible, but they are showing you an actual helicopter coming in to do a sea rescue or whatever it is. And you're like, this is so cool. So I love that about Pluto TV, but I don't have Tubi, but we do Hulu and one of the other things.
Yeah.
And I try to support those platforms because they do give me things like Flipper. What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on Flipper at all?
I don't. I'm not really that in tune with Flipper.
Yep.
I don't. I mean, we last time we bonded over Alias a little bit. We don't have the Flipper connection, but so you're saying Flipper is on Pluto TV.
Yeah, you watch it, and they've got ads and everything, but it's just like a regular TV experience. Well, the ad situation is weird because it's just like they sell ads, not because of who Flipper's audience would be. It's just
right.
Be an ad.
Yeah. Well, so Pluto seems like an AVOD, like Tubi, and I think you probably can't. I think everybody has Tubi if you just have to download it, but it's like It's so basically it has ads, so it's a different model. So I think Beelines will sell to more AVOD platforms, some subscription based, but see, I love Tubi because it has every 90s movie that I've forgotten about. Like I recently watched Deep Cover with Larry. Back then he was Larry Fishburne, and then he became Lawrence Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum. I watched The Hotspot with Don Johnson and Virginia Madsen. Like I've been watching all these movies that either I've never seen or I've forgotten about, and they're just on Tubi, and I'm just like in heaven. So
hilarious.
Tubi and Shudder. I've been there. That's where
okay.
So, but
so if people want to watch Beelines, it's going to come out, and right now it's on Prime Video, right? I think it's what is it here?
Yes, that is $2. This is sort of the window where it'll start to roll out. Beelines is check it out on Amazon. And then one other, and then that's really the only film I have that's being distributed right now. But I have two others that are in the festival circuit, and hopefully soon coming to distribution and streamers. One is The Depths, which is a found footage horror film with Eric Roberts. The hardest working man in show business. It's a found footage film that involves astral projection within the confines of a documentary film class. It is a wild ride. So we've got that, and then a film called Compression, which might be near and dear to your heart, Pete, because it's about a podcaster, a true crime podcaster who may be she's a very successful true crime podcaster who is agoraphobic because she's had some trauma in her past. She's taking a 2-week break, and she decides to, because she can't leave her house, she wants to go somewhere. So she decides to ingest some magic mushrooms. And then she freaks out. We're not sure if what's happening is actually in her mind or if she's being stalked by one of the people in the cases that she's investigating. And it's just doing really well on the festival circuit. We're very proud of it. And the team behind Beelines, myself, Jacob Belinsky, and Emily Dirkholtz, who is the star of both Compression and Beelines, we're sort of the triumvirate, sort of bring in the creativity to it, and they're just phenomenal. So I'm really proud of both of them. And as I mentioned, Jacob, he's the guy who directed it, shot it. We all co-produced it, and I co-wrote it with Jake. And then he shot Beelines, and she's in Beelines. So it's been a great symbiotic relationship.
I love it. When someone wants to watch one of your movies, and I've been putting links up here, everybody, just right there's the Amazon link for Beelines, and if you look on, well, depending on when you watch this episode, maybe it's already on Tubi and Fubu and all these other places. What is your preference? Would you rather someone go and rent it on Amazon? I mean, obviously just watch it, right? But is there a better spot where you're like, oh man, you know where we make the most money per watch? It's on blah blah blah. What is the place? Like, you're the shopkeeper. Where do you want us to buy this thing?
um, you know, because the AVOD space is so new to me. I'm not sure exactly how that relates to the subscription base like Amazon.
Right.
No place was just on subscription base, like it was on every platform basically,
Yeah.
in the US and Canada. So, honestly, I Amazon is great, but as long as someone's watching it, I guess with Amazon you can watch it uninterrupted, no commercials. The thing about Beelines is it has like some natural breaks where it cuts to black.
Mm-hmm.
And I just envision like there probably will be commercials within those breaks.
Yeah.
And because the film is intricate, watching it straight through and being able to concentrate without those breaks might be a bit better. So maybe Amazon or, whatever other streamers it gets on. But as long as you watch the film, I will be happy. And not just because, I'll rake in, a couple pennies, but I'll be happy that people watch it. That's all.
Yeah. The access to thrillers and horror, horror always does well, and for whatever reason, thrillers are like just a level or two below in terms of the quantity of them, and then a lot of times the quality. Why is that? Why have we gotten so far away from that? And I'm not saying thrillers are dead, right? But why have we gotten so far away from them?
That's a great question. I love thrillers. I love psychological thrillers. I feel like and I think that might be why I love Tubi, because there were so many amazing thrillers in the 90s. But, most of them were, $10 million, films with James Woods or, Sharon Stone. I can't tell you how many times I've watched Basic Instinct. I mean,
Sure.
Hundreds. They just don't make films like that. Hollywood doesn't really make them, or maybe now it's a limited series on Netflix. Yeah. Presumed Innocent was an incredible book, an incredible film. And then they just made the limited series, which I didn't watch. I hear it's good, but I've seen it, but I enjoyed it as a film. So I don't know. I don't know. Horror, as I said, I watch a lot of Shudder, which is exclusively horror, and I watch just a ton of films that people haven't heard of, and I love watching low budget films. I like horror movies because they're short. There's an expectation. I kind of know what they are, and it is a genre that is, you can follow the rules, but it's a good, the really good films circumvent and change the game. So I think that, and there's just a built-in audience. People like that. It's not as in my DNA as others. I don't think I could ever make a straight up horror film. Like Beelines is probably the closest I can do, but it's still a little horror adjacent, as Jacob calls it. It's more of a thriller. But yeah, I don't know. I think that, I love the films of Brian De Palma. He's made so many incredible psychological thrillers, even though some of them are off the wall, like batshit crazy. I don't mind. It's a space that I still write thrillers. I would love to make big budgeted thrillers. I don't know why. I just feel like maybe horror films are easier to make. They're easier to package. There's more of a built-in audience, and I think perhaps the demographic is younger. Like if it's like a couple high school kids or even teenagers, like let's watch a horror movie, as opposed to let's watch this psychosexual thriller. Maybe it's not the same. It's the same thing. So and they're probably not as gory. I definitely like. I'm certainly not a huge fan of gore, but I appreciate the artisans and the skill to like make that. Like I've worked on so many horror films. Like it's incredible. It's so much fun, and it is a way to sort of deal with the macabre in ways that it's palatable and make it easier to deal with some of maybe the real horrors of the world. The real horrors of the world are so much worse that
that's true.
That as you know, that it's watching a horror film, I think, is a release for people.
Yeah, yeah. Is American Psycho a horror movie or a thriller, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's satire. It does have elements
Yeah,
of horror. It is the thriller. I don't know. I don't know what that is.
yeah.
I think that movie is an outlier. It also is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Like, I watched that movie and I laugh at all of the 80s tropes and the scene in which they're comparing business cards. Like, I
Yes.
find it to be so hilarious. And
Yeah.
that's a real genre defying movie. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a film I like so much better than the book as well. I'm not a huge fan of
Right.
the book, but I love the film. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's funny when you see it in horror, like in the, well, I was going to say like in Blockbuster, like, but it's not even in Blockbuster anymore. But like, I guess in the algorithm of what's horror on your streamer.
Yeah. Yeah. Fight Club's kind of the same way too, where there's a lot of social commentary in it, and it's not a horror movie, but it's definitely hard to. I don't know. I struggle to put that into a specific genre or even two genres, mixed together. It's a unique film, and the book is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Chuck Palahniuk's books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got really into them after seeing Fight Club, and then I'm reading a lot of them. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's now they're just David Fincher films. They're in its own. That's where that lives.
The other day I was at. Go ahead.
No, I was also thinking about Seven. Seven being a David Fincher
sure.
film. I mean, and that is clearly has elements of horror, but it's also more of a thriller. I mean, there's also action in it. These movies are really specific to him. Even though the premise and what happens in it is so horrific. But yeah.
You have to watch that movie more than once too, because there's so much greatness in it, and the story is so rich that you can miss things. Like, and this will sound ridiculous, but I didn't know why it was called Seven when I walked out. I'm like, is it Seven Deadly Sins? Is it because it's the guy's 7 days until he's done working, he retires? Is it some other reason because there's just so much going on. You have to go back because you're watching it in real time. And then now that you have knowledge of what happens in the movie, you can see other things that are happening. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this movie's complex.
And that's such an interesting thing about films is like, most films you really have to watch more than once to totally get everything. I mean, I know that a film like Beelines, and obviously the best storytelling, you get it all right away, or maybe just the best story. I know that some things, especially with a film like Beelines, I didn't mention the fact that it is the narrative it's not a straight narrative. So we are out of time and things piece together. And then I think on second watch, you get a better sense of where everything fits in terms of structure. So it's a little bit more challenging. And I know that, even a film like Pulp Fiction that has a similar structure, you don't get everything on first watch. I remember when I first saw it, I was sort of blown up, like, whoa, like that was incredible, but I need to see it again. Not that I'm comparing Beelines to Pulp Fiction, but I'm just saying that you have to, with most films, whether it's, Seven or and it's funny, like I make a list of all the films that I watch, but I also make a list. On that list are films that I haven't seen in a long time, because it's like watching them for the first time if you haven't seen a film in 5-10 years, because there's so many things that are new to you, and you've changed, you've grown, you will see them differently than when you did 5 years ago. So
it is so true. It is. I watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and I love that movie. And I was a kid when it came out, and those kids were just a little older than me, because I wasn't quite in high school yet. But I was there, and I knew high school kids. And I watch it now, and I'm a parent, and I'm like, oh my God, these girls, oh my God, they're always at risk here. Jesus Christ, what is going on? It's such a crazy thing. And then I've never had anybody answer this in a way that makes sense, definitive sense to me. So when Brad is driving his car and he looks over and sees the girl in the Corvette, who is Nancy Wilson, is Brad seeing Nancy Wilson from Heart, or is he just seeing a hot chick in a tight sweater? Because I think he's seeing Nancy Wilson, and that's really what's happening. Because she's not credited as herself or anybody, right? It's just,
honestly, I didn't even realize that was Nancy Wilson.
Oh, okay.
But Nancy, well, but this is obviously before they got together, right? Her and Cameron.
I think she was with Cameron Crowe at that time. I think.
Oh,
so.
really?
I think that's why she's in there. Yeah.
Huh.
But I mean, he's in LA, right? So why wouldn't he look over and see Nancy Wilson and be like, Nancy Wilson's checking me out? You know, like that would make you lose your mind.
Well,
you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little younger. I know obviously I know Hart. I love Hart, but did people know Nancy and Ann Wilson as Nancy? In other words, they're like, oh, that's Nancy. I mean, or were they Hart? I don't know.
They were Hart then. They were for sure. Hart.
But it's like, could you see like that woman? Oh, that's Nancy Wilson. I don't know.
Right.
I guess so.
I believe that was true for that era. It's the early '80s. They had already had huge monster hits. You know.
Oh yeah, and it was
LA.
definitely before the big hair. You know, like because they had some big hits in the '80s too. But like watching those videos now, like there's a lot of stuff that might show the natural beauty, but
and she's driving a yellow Corvette, you know, like I think that's Nancy Wilson. So if I ever talk to Cameron Crowe, I'm going to ask him because he'll know the answer to that. Like, who does Brad see? You know, because that would be
you know, I love Cameron Crowe, and I love well, you have to ask him about why they got divorced because that actually hurt my heart because I love them. They were like so cool, you know. But actually, don't you know? It's probably too personal.
Do you follow Justine Bateman at all on X?
No, I don't. Well, no, I've sort of full disclosure. I don't. I'm not on X as much as I used to. In fact, obviously, you said Justine, correct? Not Justin.
Yes, right. Not Jason. Yeah,
not Jason.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, what's up with Justine Bateman?
You know, so. There's some post-election stuff that maybe makes people uncomfortable. So let's set that aside. But she's very open about who she is and where she's at. And she's like, yeah, I have wrinkles. I think wrinkles are rad, you know, because she's almost 60 years old.
Yeah.
And she talks very matter-of-factly about her desire to actually hire and I'm in the same boat. I want to hire real people to do things. Am I opposed to using AI to create a world so that I can create a world so I can afford to make this movie? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm into that. But I want to pay people. I want to pay real musicians to make real music. I don't want them pushing keys that make a whole bunch of. I'm not saying anything bad about keys players, but I want real people making things.
Yeah.
One, because I want them to get paid, but two, I just think it makes a better project overall. Maybe no one will ever notice, but I'll feel better about my work if I have hired someone to actually pull a bow across strings because there's something in that. And I think she's in the same boat. She's like, you can't just hire, robots to do human work. It's not good film.
Well, I agree with you and Justine and probably teeny others 1,000%.
Sure.
I mean, it's, I have friends who work in technology or in IT and they see AI as it can be a helpful tool. It can help, it can help society, it can help people, but the reliance on it is stupid. I mean, it's just reductive. I don't, to think that somebody would, use that or lean on that to help do something creative. I'm anti for sure.
I was watching because, like all of us, I love Godfather, and I listened to this great podcast series on Godfather, and so I was going back through and like you can watch that movie over and over and over again, and you always get something new out of it. Some realization, some eyebrow lift. You're like, oh my God, he knew, whatever it is, right? Like you can see these things. And I'm watching on Amazon because it's streaming for free on Prime, everybody. And they have like all these facts. And those are interesting enough too. And I know the movie well enough that I can go over and I can look at the fact and the thing. And then at one point, the robot says, that's Huey Lewis in the News playing Stuck on You. And I'm like, what in the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. I want to take a picture of what?
In the Godfather?
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, in the Godfather. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, are they in there as like extras? And I must have missed something. And it took me completely out of the movie as I'm trying to figure out the stupid robot error. And I'm like, there is nobody from Huey Lewis in the News in this movie that I know of. And maybe someone's going to text me tomorrow and be like, no, they're totally in that scene. And I'm like, oh, all right, whatever. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah, like maybe they were playing Tahoe and they're
yeah, right.
We'll drop that. We became experts. But that's not what it said. It said that the music, it was referencing the music played. And I'm like, that's not, I thought, did they do a cover? I'm like, no, this song is not that song. So it was such a weird
maybe there was a melody that they heard in a song that was identical to a Huey Lewis. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny with thinking about that in terms of film history with Ghostbusters. when they wanted to use "I Want a New Drug" and Huey Lewis denied them, and then they wrote Ghostbusters with the same exact melody as "I Want a New Drug," and then Huey Lewis sued them and made a ton of money on it. So maybe Huey Lewis is like he's like Neo in the Matrix for this. I don't know, but it's it's interesting because I love you, and it also leads back to American Psycho as well.
Sure does. Yeah. Well, and Ray Parker Jr., right, who already was a made man in music and was basically retired when he wrote that song. And if you write a worldwide #1 hit that then becomes a franchise route, oh my God, the money you make on that song. So Huey Lewis and the News made out either way. They're going to get paid a lot of money to do that. Yeah, it's crazy. Hey, we've been almost an hour, and I don't want to dominate every single question. I want to leave you a couple minutes here if you want to ask me anything or get into anything else. But what I do want to say to everybody else is go watch Beelines. Watch it on Amazon, and you can go to rockstarfilms.com, and you can learn all about the projects there. And then here is the link for Beelines on Amazon. You can go there and watch that, and I think it costs $3 to rent it. You can buy it too. Hey, that's a good idea. All right, so what do you want to wrap up on, man?
I don't know. I guess I was first off. What was that Godfather pod you were listening to? That's interesting.
I think it's called The Movie You Can't Refuse, and if it's not that, it's something right. You know, it's taking that line and putting it into the context of that, and it's this lady who goes through and she just brings in a bunch of points of view, you know, and brings the film into modern times, because there's a lot of things in that movie that are not appropriate in open language now, right? But it's also a movie of its time about a movie from another time. So,
right.
But there's a lot of interesting notes and creativity and people who see like, what is this movie about? And then they ask all these really incredible creative people, and they all say different things, you know, because that movie is about a lot of things, and it's about life. And so it's really great. I'll see if I can find the link while you talk.
Yeah. First. And I guess to that point, are there other, like, what's a good podcast that you like that you could share? Because I'm always looking for new bits of content. Besides your show, I listen to a fair amount of true crime, and that's about it. But I'm always looking for and I love limited series. Anything good?
Yeah, there's tons of stuff. I don't listen that much because I am too busy already doing podcast things.
Gotcha.
So like I don't even publish my show to the podcast networks. I don't even bother with that because it was a cost center and it was just taking money out of my account and just the numbers were going, because the podcast world has really shrunk a lot. There's still a ton of them, but there are so many powerful silos. It's hard to compete in that zone. So I just stopped paying money for that. But there's a bunch of them that I like. I especially like a lady named Mel Robbins, and she's it's more of like a female centric kind of show, but she's very much like my special someone, and I'm very much like Mel's special someone. And so when they're reasoning through things here in middle age, you know, all of a sudden, like I'm like, oh, there's a lot of perspective here that helps me be a better me and understand my relationship better. And look, we do great, but we do great because we work on it, right? So I think Mel Robbins is fantastic for that. There'll be a topic that I'm interested in, and I'll jump in and I'll listen to a bunch of something. And so in our world, we're dealing with older parents of dementia and all these things that you have to try to master. And there's no book for this stuff. Well, these podcasts have been for me a book for that. So I sort of am less tied to a specific show and more looking for specific topics, you know, that are interesting to me. And because of what I do and because of what you do, like my topics are way broader and more randomized than what YouTube can handle or anything that's going to recommend. They have no idea how to recommend to me things, because I'm talking to you. Yesterday, I talked to a guy who wrote a book about axe murderers. And so as I'm looking things up, the computer's like, I don't know what, you know. And so that's sort of where I'm at. And I've also been listening to a lot of books, just a ton of books on Audible. I love the heck out of Audible. Yeah. So that's sort of my answer.
My wife is constantly listening to books on Audible. And I really have not gotten into it as much as I probably should, but I don't know. Honestly, sometimes I just need silence. And I feel like there's just so much noise, and most of it's good noise, but I just need to listen to my head. And
I'm going to put the show link for this podcast on. So I'm putting Spotify up. So if you guys don't like Spotify, just type in the words and I'll type in the title here. It's The Godfather, a film we can't refuse is the name of it. And so I'll type that in here. The Godfather.
You've got some Godfather lighting on you, Pete. It's good. Maybe you become a Godfather. Yeah.
So dramatic. Yeah. I watch YouTube videos on how to do better lighting.
Well, Gordon Willis, the master of darkness as a DP. I mean, really one of the all-time greats.
Yeah. They talk about that in the when they get the notes right, which most of them are right, everybody. But he's like, "Hey, Gordon, seriously, in this one here, a little bit more light, please." And he's like, "Nah,
no,
that's not why you hired me."
That window, we just need a little light coming in, but it's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just put this link up here. Can't refuse. And if you type in something close to that, I'm sure you'll find it. And if I can get rid of
I have a drive home. I'll fire it up on the drive home.
Yeah, and it's a multi-parter. And so she goes through and it's great. Do you like The Godfather where it's strung together in that linear fashion where you blend one or two into one long film?
I mean... Not I watched it once. I think there were some additional scenes added too. Is that right? Some things that were filled in. Yeah. I mean, I don't, because I've seen the film so many times. Yes, but typically I don't like the altered versions. I like the original. Like I wasn't a fan of Apocalypse Now Redux. I know that was another Coppola. He added like 45 minutes to it. I prefer the original. I mean, people love The Godfather so much that I think it's cool to give it a different lean. But, I was okay with the originals. But I don't know.
Did you? I like any version of it because it's fun to see different takes on it, And I often wonder about that when you mess with time. This boxing movie that we might make, I think we have to mess with time because we're going to set up the characters, but they're little kids fighting in a stable, and that's cool. But I think the coolest image in the whole thing, and this is just how I think about making movies. I'm not the director, so I won't decide, but I'll have influence, is these two guys are going to fight. And one guy's like, "Hey, we're going to do gloves." And the other guy's like, "Yeah, totally. We're going to do gloves." And he shows up and he's like, "Oh man, I forgot to bring my gloves on purpose." Right. And so someone's like, "Oh, I have gloves." And he hands him these riding gloves that have stitches. And it's not planned. It's just how it goes. And so the first thing you show is that stitched glove just splitting because this fight is a horror show. Jeez. I mean, when you read the amazing things, like when you read old newspapers, because there wasn't TV and there wasn't cameras and there weren't radios and all these things, you had to focus all of your energy. And these people have incredible memories. And so they'll write down word for word what the Gettysburg Address was because they just were locked in. Because that was your one shot, And so you read the accounts of this fight, 27 rounds, and it's just and blood and blood and blood. At one point, they fixed one of the fighters' faces with scissors.
Oh my god!
Because he had and so you just want to. I want to show that first thing of that punch hitting, and then just skin splitting on bone, and then go back into where it starts. Because I think that's a good use of because otherwise you got to show a 27 round fight at the end.
That might be kind of brutal for one to take in at once,
Yeah. And you don't need to see the whole damn fight, right? You just need to get the idea of it. And so,
I mean, you have to get a really good effects person to get all that blood stuff or makeup, special effects makeup. That's incredible. I mean, what they can do with gashes and blood.
Yeah. I was thinking we might have to even cartoonify the violence, and just kind of comic book it or something too, because it is going to be hard. It's doable, of course, but yeah. And then that's only since we've decided that it's probably going to be a film instead of a documentary, because there's just not enough people that have even the memory, like a third level memory of this thing, because they're all gone, right? So anyhow, anything else before we wrap this up? This has been great, by the way. Totally enjoyed the conversation.
No, Pete, it's always great talking to you about film and whatnot. Good to see you. That's all for me. I'm over my limit.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna come right back to you. Everybody else, bye-bye. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.